You walk into a room, soft lighting laughter echoing eyes gliding past each other like invisible currents. Then suddenly, you stop. Not because someone is laughing loudly or dressed extravagantly, but because there is a woman doing nothing at all, and yet no one can ignore her presence. Carl Jung called this the frequency of the soul, a phenomenon that does not belong to the realm of logic, but to that deep land where soul resonates with soul. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Carl Jung, in a world where everything can be edited, from faces, voices, even emotions, there remains one thing that cannot be faked: the vibration that comes from the deepest essence of a human being. This woman doesn't need to try to be loved. She doesn't ask, "Do you like me?" because she has already chosen herself. It's not a tactic of attraction. It is the energy of presence. And the strange thing is the man cannot explain it. He only knows something in her awakens a part of himself that had long been asleep. A story from the East. In Zen tradition, there's an ancient metaphor. A disciple asks the master, "How will I know when I am enough, when I have come home to myself?" The master doesn't answer. He pours tea. When the cup overflows, he smiles. When you stop pouring into yourself what others want, you'll realize you've always been full. The woman in this story does not seek anything from the outside. She shows up like a cup that's already full, not out of pride, but because she has returned to her essence, her original wholeness. And an example from the West. In the movie Before Sunrise, Jesse and Celine sit on a train meeting for the first time. Neither stands out in appearance nor tries to impress. Yet something touches between them, not because they tried to make each other like them, but because they allowed themselves to be present, honestly. And from that honesty, a connection is born, not through logic, but from the unconscious realm Jung called the collective soul. Have you ever been drawn to someone not because they were beautiful or smart, but simply because you felt something real in them? That is the beginning of a phenomenon Carl Jung called anima awakening. When a woman lives fully in her essence, something dormant in the man's unconscious is stirred. When a woman returns to her essence, a man faces himself. There's something mysterious about the people we can't forget. They don't have to say much or walk in under a spotlight, but there's something in their presence, quiet yet profound, that makes us feel seen not by the eyes, but by another dimension within the soul. Carl Jung once said that what is not made conscious will appear in your life as fate. And a woman who lives in her essence, not performing, not needing to be chosen, is exactly that image. A scene in The Mood for Love, when silence becomes pure energy. In Wong Kar-wai's film In the Mood for Love, the female lead, Suli Jen, doesn't try to be seductive. She dresses modestly, speaks little, never laughs for too long. Yet the man opposite her, Chow Mo-wan, is increasingly drawn into her silence. Not because she makes the first move, but because she doesn't need to. She doesn't try to be loved. Her self-possession causes everything around her to fall silent. That is essence, an energy field that radiates not for a purpose, but because it's already full within. Essence versus persona, when real is more attractive than perfect. Jung drew a distinction between two ways of living persona: the social mask and essence, the original self. Persona is when you show up to a date with your best look, your best stories, your most practiced smile. Essence is when you show up and simply be, not to prove, not to win, just, "I'm here." A woman living in persona may seem attractive at first, but soon she exhausts the room. A woman living from essence might not be the most beautiful one there, but she's the one the man can't forget, because she awakens something in him beyond logic, beyond control. Anima is not an ideal, it's a door. In Jung's psychoanalytic theory, anima is the forgotten feminine within a man. Soft, emotional, attuned to beauty. A woman who lives in her essence touches that anima effortlessly. She isn't sexy by society's standards, but something in her stirs. Forgotten feelings, ancestral memory, dreamlike depth. Anima doesn't need logic. It just needs one real presence to step out of the shadows. When a woman stops performing, she starts attracting souls. A man may be impressed by a beautiful, smart, charming woman, but he only feels deeply moved when he meets a woman who needs nothing from him. A woman who doesn't try to be sweet, doesn't try to make him feel special. She's simply there, lacking nothing, overflowing with herself. Jung called it the power of the living archetype, a woman who does nothing but awakens what's been asleep in the man. And that's what makes him want to stay. Are you living as a mask or as your essence? Have you ever entered a relationship and felt the need to keep an image? Have you ever smiled when you didn't want to, or said, "I'm fine," while screaming inside? Have you ever tried to make someone stay, not out of love, but fear of losing? If the answer is yes, maybe you're living through a persona. And that's something no one teaches us. But the soul always knows. Essence doesn't ask to be chosen. Essence has already chosen itself. A woman living from essence doesn't ask, "Do you choose me?" She walks in and speaks through her presence. "I've already chosen myself. What about you?" She doesn't challenge. She doesn't control. But she won't let others violate her wholeness either. And that quiet fullness makes a conscious man unable to ignore her. He may not choose her, but he won't forget her. You are not alone on this journey. We, the women and men taking off our masks, are creating a space where truth matters more than being liked. Comment below. When do you feel most like your true self? What helps you feel that being authentic is the most beautiful thing? Because when you dare to be real, you inspire others to do the same. Essence doesn't just attract, essence awakens. So when a man's anima is awakened by such a woman, what happens within him? Will he love or will he fear? Will he dare walk the path back to himself? And if she doesn't chase, will the connection dissolve or deepen? In the next part, we'll go deeper into the inner world of a man when his soul starts to remember itself, sparked by the presence of a woman who lives from truth. When a woman awakens a man's soul, one, a magnetism that defies logic. He can't explain what's happening. This woman isn't trying to be seductive. She's not more radiant than anyone else in the room. But just minutes after she walks in, the atmosphere shifts. Conversations slow down and he, a man used to sizing women up by appearance, smiles, and well-rehearsed behavior, suddenly finds himself wanting to listen, to be still, to be present. This pull isn't about her body, her words, or her gestures. It comes from a deeper unconscious layer, where an ancient symbol has been stirred, the anima. Carl Jung called it the aliveness of the soul, a force that pulls a man in not through strategy, but as if a forgotten part of him remembers her from long before they met. 2, from persona to essence, a shift in every action. To see this clearly, let's compare two kinds of women. In everyday situations, the difference between living from a persona and living from essence becomes striking. On a date, someone living from persona tends to say what they think the other person wants to hear, laugh at just the right moments, and try hard to leave a good impression. In contrast, someone living from essence listens with presence, asks genuine questions, and doesn't feel the need to perform or impress. When receiving a compliment, the persona-driven person might feel obligated to respond sweetly or modestly to maintain likability, but the person rooted in essence simply smiles and receives the compliment with grace without needing to add anything extra. And when misunderstood, someone in persona may quickly react or explain themselves to avoid being judged. Meanwhile, someone in their essence doesn't rush to defend. Instead, they pause, observe, and may even ask a clarifying question, choosing curiosity over defensiveness. The first woman, though attractive, is easily forgotten. She stimulates the surface. The second, though quiet, touches something deeper. She awakens a forgotten part of the man. This is the moment when the anima is activated. 3, anima projection. Is it love or an illusion? But here lies a profound danger. Projection. Jung warned when a man has yet to meet the anima within himself, he unconsciously projects it onto a woman. He thinks he loves her, but really he loves the softness, the depth, the feeling he's long repressed within himself. He doesn't truly love the woman. He loves the parts of himself he's denied. If the woman lives authentically without manipulating, she can help him awaken. But if she too is stuck in persona, they fall together into a romantic fantasy where no one is truly present. That love will not last. It's not rooted in truth, but in distorted reflection. 4, the essence woman. The mirror that makes a man face himself. Only a woman who lives from her core, who doesn't seek to impress or be chosen, can hold her own frequency strong enough not to be consumed by idealization. And it's that inner steadiness, that quiet presence that becomes a mirror, reflecting the man's own shadow. He begins to feel stirred, not just by love, but by contact with forgotten parts of himself. His fear of intimacy, buried emotions, the softness he was never allowed to show. He might pull away, react, even reject her. Not because she's wrong, but because he isn't yet ready to meet himself. But if he chooses to stay, if he's brave enough, then this connection becomes more than love. It becomes the door into the journey back to his own soul. 5, an invitation from the Essence Circle. If you've ever been that man or that woman, you are not alone. Let's share honestly. Have you ever loved someone without knowing why? Have you ever felt someone projected unrealistic expectations onto you that you couldn't meet? Or have you ever let go of performance and stepped into a love that didn't need to impress? Drop a comment below. Let's create a space where we speak truthfully, listen deeply, and love not from lack, but from wholeness. A glimpse into what's next: individuation, becoming whole together. When the anima is awakened, love is no longer a game to win. It becomes a sacred rite of rebirth. In the next part, we'll step into individuation, not just the path of one soul, but two souls walking toward wholeness together. One meets the shadow, the other holds the light, and together they break through illusion to love each other as they truly are. When love isn't real, the dark side of anima projection. There's a kind of love that makes people intoxicated, not because it's so beautiful, but because it isn't real. Carl Jung pointed this out nearly a century ago when he described the phenomenon of anima projection. A man falls in love with a woman not for who she truly is, but because she awakens his inner, idealized image of femininity. This kind of love feels deep, but it's an illusion. Every man carries within him the eternal image of woman, but not the image of this or that particular woman, but a definite feminine image. C.G. Jung, CW9, Part 1. When a woman becomes an image instead of a person, imagine this: a man sees a woman, not the most stunning in the room, but something in her touches him deeply. He can't take his eyes off her. He thinks she's the one, my destiny. But in truth, it's not her. It's the image she activates in him, the softness, the wisdom, the tenderness he has long lost touch with in himself. That's where anima projection begins, when a woman is no longer seen as a real human being, but as a symbolic figure. The cost of idealization, illusion, and collapse. At first, the love feels intense. He believes he's found his missing half. But over time, the woman starts to feel exhausted. She can't always be gentle, always say the right thing. She has off days. She needs space. And when she starts showing her full self, he feels betrayed. The truth is, he hasn't been betrayed. It's just the image in his mind that's starting to crack. The man who projects the anima is in love, not with the woman, but with his own unconscious. C.G. Jung, 2 essays on analytical psychology. At that moment, love turns to disappointment. And if the man isn't conscious, he might grow angry, controlling, or coldly withdraw, not because the woman changed, but because his shadow was shattered. A real story: David and Susan. David met Susan at a meditation circle. She was quiet, but her eyes were deep, her smile warm. David instantly felt a deep connection. For the first few weeks of dating, everything felt magical. But soon, Susan started showing her humanness. Some days she didn't reply to messages right away. One day she told him she felt overwhelmed by how fast things were moving. David felt like she was changing. "You're not like you were in the beginning," he said. Susan replied. "At first I was silent because I was observing. I'm still me. I just can't always be the version in your head." David went quiet. He realized he hadn't fallen in love with Susan. He had fallen for his own projection. How to escape the trap of projection. There are 2 ways people react when the projection breaks. One is anger and retreat. The other is awareness and asking, what part of me did she awaken that I've forgotten? If the man has the courage to look inward, the love stops being an illusion. It becomes a chance to reconnect with himself. And if the woman dares to live authentically, refusing to maintain the ideal, she becomes an awakener, not a servant to his image. Jung's wisdom on maturity and love. The meeting of 2 personalities is like the contact of 2 chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. C.G. Jung. Love is not about the other person making you feel whole. Love is about becoming more whole together. But that only happens when both are willing to face the shadow, where ideals are shattered, but the soul finally begins to grow. If you've ever been idealized and then abandoned when you showed your true self, or if you've idealized someone and felt lost when they didn't match what you imagined, you're not alone. Drop a comment below. Have you ever fallen in love too quickly? Have you ever been loved without truly being seen? We read every comment. This is a space where healing souls can meet each other. Coming up next, we'll explore how to tell the difference between true love and the hunger that arises from inner emptiness. How do you know if being drawn to someone is the voice of your soul or just the echo of unmet needs? And how can you love someone deeply without turning them into a symbol for something you're still missing? If you've ever felt drawn to someone for no clear reason, you won't want to miss the next part. When you love from lack, the difference between hungry love and whole love. There's a quiet but profound difference between two women entering the same relationship. One seeks love as if it were oxygen. The other steps into love as if she's already full. This difference isn't in their words, their looks, or how charming they are. It's in the energetic frequency each brings. Jung called it the resonance of the soul. In modern psychology, we call it attachment style. Hungry love, anxious attachment in the shadow of lack. Have you ever felt a vague fear when loving someone? Like if they didn't reply quickly, it must mean you did something wrong. Or have you found yourself constantly on edge scanning for signs of rejection? That's not love, it's fear of not being loved disguised as affection. Psychologists call this anxious attachment. It often develops in childhood when love is inconsistent, creating a conditional sense of worth. I'm only lovable if I'm good, if I meet expectations. Adults with this attachment style often enter relationships with the energy of lack, as if they must constantly earn their right to be loved. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Carl Jung. Whole love, secure attachment, and the energy of presence. In contrast, there's the woman who carries the energy of wholeness. She doesn't need to say much. She doesn't try hard to get attention. She doesn't hide her real emotions, but she also doesn't let them control her. She can want someone, but she isn't dependent on them. This is known as secure attachment. Jung saw it as the state of someone who has begun the journey of individuation, a person united within themselves. Only the man who can quietly contemplate his own soul can truly encounter another. C.G. Jung, Modern Man in Search of a Soul. This woman doesn't love to be filled. She loves as an overflow of already being whole. A simple date, who do you remember? You're on a date. One person says all the right things seems very nice, but somehow you feel drained. Because behind every sentence is the silent plea, I'm trying to make you like me. The other person, they're quieter. They don't rush to impress, but their gaze is sincere. Their presence makes you feel seen. No effort, no strategy. Who do you remember? The first made you like them. The second you can't forget. How to move from anxious to secure. No one is born perfectly secure, but anyone can heal and reconnect with their essence. This path doesn't begin with finding the right person. It begins with returning to yourself. Ask yourself, what do I feel I'm lacking when I love? Am I loving as a way to be loved back? What would change if I no longer needed to be chosen? The answers lie in facing the core fear and loving yourself even while still imperfect. Are you in a relationship that leaves you tired? Have you ever found yourself trying too hard to be loved? Or have you met someone who made you feel like you didn't need to try at all? Leave a comment with your truth. This is a space where you don't have to be okay, where we no longer ask, will they choose me, but instead, have I chosen myself? In the next part, we'll enter one of the deepest realms of Jungian thought, the shadow, and how a woman's true magnetic presence doesn't come from being nice, but from having faced her own darkness and become someone you simply can't look away from. If you're tired of always being perfect or feel like you're not gentle enough, you won't want to miss the final chapter. Because true attraction doesn't come from dazzling light. It comes from the place where darkness has been seen and embraced. No more chasing. No more needing to be chosen. Only the vibration of someone who has become herself. There's a quiet, profound moment when you no longer chase love, no longer decorate yourself in hopes of being chosen. You simply exist. And it's in that pure presence, unburdened by strategy or effort, that people remember you most. Carl Jung called this the state of someone who has passed through individuation, the journey back to one's original essence, no longer enslaved by the persona, the social mask we wear, but instead living from essence, the core truth of the soul. Imagine a woman walking into a cafe. She's not dressed to impress, she's not loud or overly friendly, but no one can take their eyes off her. There's something profoundly real about her, like she carries a doorway into a deeper world. Her magnetism doesn't come from outward charm, but from the energy radiating within the calm of someone who's been through pain, the power of someone who has embraced both her light and shadow. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But this privilege doesn't come from confidence or independence alone. This woman has walked through the fear of abandonment. She has faced childhood wounds. She has looked into the parts of herself no one ever taught her how to love and said, "I see you. I won't abandon you anymore." Facing the darkness, the beginning of true light. Since childhood, women are taught to be nice, gentle, agreeable, easy to love. But the cost, anger gets repressed. Desire gets silenced. Authentic emotions get replaced by performance. Eventually, she no longer knows who she really is. Jung called this rejected part the shadow, the psychological darkness that holds everything we in society try to hide. A woman who hasn't met her shadow lives in constant tension, trying to please, trying to be right, trying not to be judged. But once she begins to turn toward the shadow, something strange happens. Anger becomes healthy boundaries. Wounds become compassion. Desire becomes vitality. She stops performing the sweet girl and begins becoming herself, sometimes fierce, sometimes silent, but always real. And that is magnetism, the kind that doesn't try but pulls you in anyway. A simple example: two women, two energies. Imagine two women on a date. The first dresses beautifully, speaks charmingly, never lets a silence fall. But behind her eyes, there's worry. Am I enough? The man across from her feels drained and doesn't know why. The second, she's not trying to impress. She listens more than she speaks. She's not rushed, not defensive. And somehow, without effort, the man feels calmer in her presence. Not because she's perfect, but because she's real. The difference: one loves from emptiness. The other loves from fullness. And energy doesn't lie. Where Jung meets modern attachment theory. While Jung speaks of the shadow, modern psychology introduces attachment styles shaped from early childhood. A woman with anxious attachment often comes from inconsistent love. She fears being abandoned, and so she clings or reshapes herself to keep someone close. A woman with secure attachment does the opposite. She doesn't overdo. It doesn't fear losing someone, doesn't chase because she's already connected to herself. Jung didn't use terms like anxious or secure, but in speaking of individuation, he meant just this: when you're brave enough to face all of yourself without rejecting any part, you become like a tree rooted in its own soil. From there, all relationships come not from hunger, but from choice. If you've ever felt you had to try hard to be loved or act extra sweet to avoid being left, you're not alone. Millions are shedding the mask and coming home to their essence. Share in the comments. What part of yourself have you been hiding, yet deep down know it wants to be seen? Write it not for anyone to heal it for you, but so you can begin to truly see yourself. In the next part, we'll go even deeper into one of Jung's most essential ideas: integration, the union of the whole self. Not just to find love, but to finally live as someone emotionally free, no longer defined by anyone's gaze. Because in the end, the woman who doesn't try to be loved is the one the whole world wants to be near. Not because she demands it, but because she has returned home to herself. Returning to the inner home, no longer needing love to feel worthy. There's an image Jung often used: a person descending into the bottom of a dark well, not to escape life, but to find the part of their soul they lost down there. And only when they touch the bottom, the darkness stops being frightening. It becomes the solid ground upon which true life begins. Do you see yourself in that image? Maybe you've entered relationships with a hopeful heart, only to realize you were loving like a starving child, waiting for someone to give you affection, fearing that if you weren't sweet enough, you'd be left behind. Or maybe you've always been the strong one, the together one, always fine, always enough, but only because you've never dared to let anyone see the soft, messy parts inside. Both carry the same truth: they haven't truly been seen by themselves. A real story: a girl in the light in her locked room. I remember a young woman who once told me, "When I was little, whenever I got angry, my mom would say, 'Don't make people uncomfortable.' When I felt sad, she'd say, 'Cheer up, everyone's tired.' So I learned to hide my feelings. I learned to smile at the right time. Everyone thought I was strong and independent, but inside me was a locked room where my real emotions have been shut away since childhood." Then one day, after the most important relationship in her life fell apart, she did something she had never done before. She sat with herself. She didn't distract. She didn't try to fix. She simply listened to her own heart. She began to write, to cry, to rage, to cry again. And in the midst of that darkness, a strange light emerged. I don't need anyone to love me in order to feel worthy, Because I have chosen to love myself even when I'm messy, weak, imperfect. When a woman returns to her essence, that woman is no longer the girl trying to earn points in other people's eyes. She no longer asks, am I good enough? She asks, am I honest with myself? She's not magnetic because of her outfit, her smile, or her words. She's magnetic because of the calm that radiates from within, like someone who's faced the dark and isn't afraid of it anymore. And someone like that you don't forget, not because they need you, but because you feel safe around them. Final message: healing is not to be more lovable. It's to love without losing yourself. Many of us begin our healing journeys with a hidden motive: I'll become better, so I'll finally be loved. But that's not the real path. The real journey isn't about becoming palatable. It's about standing strong in life, undefended, unmasked, unperformed. So when you say I love you, it's not coming from a place of need, please fill me up, but from genuine offering, I am full. And I'd like to invite you into my inner world with no expectations, no conditions. That is the love of someone who has become whole. If you're still here reading this, then maybe there's a quiet part of you longing to be seen. Comment below something you've hidden in love, or simply write, I am returning to myself. We're creating a space where you don't have to be fine, don't have to be right, just real. And that is the most beautiful thing. If this video touched something tender inside, you hit subscribe so each week you can journey deeper into this homecoming with me. And if you know a friend, a sister, a mother who's been living in the belief that she must be loved to feel worthy, share this video with her. It might be the first ray of light she's seen in a long walk through darkness. You don't need to be perfect to be loved. You just need to dare to show up as you are. And that's when the miracle begins.